Hello, everybody. Welcome to Raising Vibrations, and you're with Simon today. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at the full moon in Libra. And of course, this is also happening on the equinox, 21st of March 2019. And for depending on where you are in the world, this will land on the 20th of March as well. Okay, so wow, what an actual interesting set of days we've just gone through, and I definitely want to get into that in today's video. Talk a lot about the nature of what happened in New Zealand, how that relates to other experiences that are happening all over the world that might not necessarily have gotten the intense media coverage that they should, and also looking at this huge wave of movement that's taking place right now with the Swedish girl that's trying to get the attention of everybody, saying climate change needs to be taken seriously, and how this actually looks at the nature of the astrology at the moment. A couple of things that I wanted to mention before I jump into the analysis today and sharing my own visions. I'm currently working on I'm just almost towards the end of it. It's of my Chiron workshop and teachings, and I'm really looking forward to sharing that with you all, in due time, because in my looking at Chiron within what's available on the internet, I've noticed that there just seems to be a block missing, a piece missing, that helps us take the information that we've got, that we've read about, and really begin to digest it in a way that can truly do the thing that Chiron is essentially incarnating into our consciousness for, which is to heal. So I'm really excited to be talking to you about this Chiron workshop and this Chiron teachings that I'm doing. I'm going to break it down into 4 parts, and designed specifically to help us digest this. So I'll be sharing that soon. I think that will be within the next couple of weeks. I've been working on that for just over 2 years, 3 years, but more so specifically the last 6 months. It's been really on my radar, and it's time to put it out there. And I think it's really great as well that the sun is conjunct Chiron for this full moon. So what a great way to begin actually incarnating its energy into our collective field. Okay. What else? Nope, that's about it in terms of that I wanted to share with you, my new beginnings in that way. I love this picture. It really speaks to me on so many levels with regards to this full moon in Libra. The first thing that I want to highlight is that when we get connected with Libra, we know that there is a dynamic of self and other. Okay, this is the relationship between Aries and Libra. So there is a sense of I, which is your ability to be present with your own field, your own awareness of yourself, and those dynamics that are naturally a part of you. And then there's the awareness of the other person's I, and what takes place between the interchange of yourself and the other self. And that's actually, funny enough, rooted in the Capricorn and Cancer axis, which in this case, we've got the North Node sitting in Cancer and Capricorn, South Node, and we'll get into the chart in terms of illustrating that. But these points reference to us this interchange between outer and inner, the macrocosm, which is reflected through this imagery over here. If you can see my mouse on the screen, maybe I'll just do this quickly for everybody so that you can see. Okay, there's the imagery, right, of the macrocosm, and here is our earthly existence of the reflection of it. And so as above, so below comes to mind. But it is also the interchange, the relationship between the inner reflective subjective world, which is deeply open to interpretation, and then the outer world, which seems to be, from a scientific perspective, something that's more organic or real, as it were. It can be objectified. And then I see this imagery over here as the human experience, the human condition, as it kind of reflects this earthliness, right? Within here, it's, even though water is part of the earth in this picture, it's more about the nature of the abstract as it interfaces with something that's very solid. And here's the tree representing the growth of expansion outwardly in a masculine form, but then the equal equation of the tree in its feminine form, right? So the yin yang. And the chairs reflect to me, especially with this full moon that's taking place, with Mercury being in Pisces and Sun in Pisces, the nature of contemplation, the self-inquiry, the process to step back from the outer world's impressions and theories and projections and step into the inner world so that your inner world can be, in a sense, explored to find an integration back into the outer world and vice versa. It's like trying to explore within yourself an equilibrium, Libra, equilibrium between an inner self and an outer self, right? And with the symbols that are in the astrology chart today, it just points to this need within our own spiritual journey to find the balance between inner reflection and an outer manifestation and the alignment that comes with that. So to me, the astrology that I want to point to today is about how we go about establishing those. What are the fundamental building blocks at an archetypal lens that reflects this journey of balance between outer and inner, and the reflection of our inner self and its process deep into the feminine understanding of your roots and where you come from and what are you genetically inherent through your conditioning, and how that becomes a path for growth in your life. And sometimes that path of growth can come through trauma, and you grow through your trauma and you process out your trauma. If you're one of those that have got large, Uranus signatures in your charts where there's, change that's taking place radically, and also the experience of growing outwardly as you grow deeply, so it's this idea of understanding that the deeper you go into yourself, the higher your tree grows outwardly in that way, so it's not about searching for something existentially, which has led us to the point of where we feel unfulfilled deeply within ourselves. This bottom tree over here hasn't been given enough sustenance to be able to materialize a reality within ourselves that equates to balance and harmony, but it's more reflective of something just, outward sort of growth, but lacks the structural organic rooting that exists within here. So the depth of our own inner psyche, in a sense, is lacking, and you can see this in many ways. Like, for instance, the nature of the imbalance between feminine and masculine principles or polarities within the psyche. And to me, this is the nature of the psyche in one way, the way to conceptualize the left and right brain and the totality of our awareness within this reality that we're existing within now. So this is some of the stuff that I want to put across with Chiron to kind of point us to the spiritual journey that Chiron is really here about for us. Okay, so here's the full moon in Aries. Oh, I've written Aries over there. I do apologize, peeps. The full moon in Libra. So this is a Mercury retrograde moment, right? So full moon in Libra, not Aries, even though the sun's in Aries at the time. So yeah, you have the sun at 0 degrees and the moon also sitting at 0 degrees over here. It's just in Libra, and the sun conjunct Chiron, right? So to me, this is pointing to a very significant aspect of this full moon in Libra, because when the sun or the moon makes contact to any sort of planets, you know that there's an essence of illumination here. There's something that needs to be illuminated, right? So you've got the sun making a connection to Chiron and Aries, and they're at the early degrees here, right? You've got Mercury still in retrograde motion. We know that because that should be saying Libra, and it's conjunct Neptune, right? 16 degrees, Neptune and 18 degrees. But we know that Mercury is moving backwards, apparently. So it gives the impression that, well, not gives the impression, it's suggesting to us that something about the nature of our intellectual process is, in a sense, in review, right? So we're reviewing something, and I'll get deeper into that as we go through the analysis of the chart. Some of the things that really stand out to me in this chart that are very, very apparent is Jupiter's conjunction, or sorry, not Jupiter's conjunction, but Jupiter's connection to this Mercury and to the Neptune, which of course has been highlighted, not just in this full moon, but also in recent cycles that have been taking place, right? Jupiter and Neptune have been talking to each other. I think I even spoke about that in the new moon. So we've got that significant aspect there. But look what's happening, right? There's a inconjunct, so it's like a blind spot angle being made to the North Node. And we also, in this instance over here, have Venus in Aquarius making an inconjunct as well. So the blind spot angle, right? So there you have this angle between Jupiter and Venus, and they're making to the North Node. So that stood out for me straight away. And also, if you have a look here as well, Uranus making an inconjunct to the moon. Okay, so there is something significant as well, which I'll get into as well. And then we've got Mars making an inconjunct to Jupiter, and as again, North Node inconjuncting to Jupiter. So there's a lot of energy at the moment with the planets that are reflecting a deep sort of paralysis or a psychological need to slow down. And you can see that with this this full moon coming in Libra, the moon will actually be coming out of a trine towards Mars and towards the South Node, which is all in an Earth sign. So immediately the Earth energy is carried on with these inconjuncts. Okay, they act as crisis and slowing down energy. So there's something here about contemplation for me. And this is what I'm talking about with this picture. It's the nature of sitting with the existence of your life and inwardly exploring the dynamics of your own values. Okay, so Mars is in Taurus, Uranus is in Taurus, and the planetary ruler of Venus at the moment is actually Uranus, as you can see over here. So Venus is in Aquarius, so Uranus is influencing that as well. So you've got this, and then of course you've got Mars in Taurus, and it's squaring the Venus over there. So you've got Venus squaring Mars, and you've got Uranus ruling Venus over there. So this symbolism points to the contemplation that is occurring from these inconjuncts as an inward search, an inward process of adjustment. There are natural adjustments that are going to be taking place in our lives right now. And these adjustments may cause a feeling of insecurity that could arise. And the insecurity that arises is probably from a feeling of, things are changing, or there's new dynamics that are taking place in your life right now. And as they kind of adjust and change in accordance with a new structural value system within inside of yourself, you'll see that this tension, this new beginning will begin to emerge. So here you have the sun at 0 degrees Aries, literally in the Aries format over here, right? Aries, this birthing of our nature, birthing of our experience into life. Completely new direction. And naturally in Aries, there is anxiety, and there's anxiety for many reasons. One of them being the natural sort of movement away from something that feels secure, something that feels known, something that feels that you have explored before, you feel comfortable in. So the contemplation that arises, that should naturally arise within inside of yourself, the inward journey, the inward exploration within inside of yourself, is leading to a deeper understanding of your own psychological and emotional dynamics, your own inner space. And this inner space is essential. And it's essential because right now, with the South Node about to approach Pluto, Pluto's sitting at 22 degrees, but on the 4th of April, which will be a day before the new moon happens, we've got Pluto conjuncting its South Node. And so we're coming up to an intense closing down cycle, right? A closing cycle of the Pluto in Capricorn and Pluto and the South Node in Capricorn theme, which we all know about, is these deep subconscious subterranean patterns within our psyche that are rooted in beliefs and ideologies and perspectives that essentially were born out of a loss of meaning. We're born out of an absolute need to explore our humanity through a masculine approach. And so for let's just take 200 years. Our sense of exploration has disconnected us from our sense of self at an earth level. And that's again why this picture over here speaks to me so much in the chart, because it talks about our separation. It talks about our separation from the earthly self, and our exploration into the higher mind, into the higher world, and in a sense manifesting a reality in which we can clearly see that a lot of our suffering originates out of loss of meaning and the desire for a belief system or a cosmology or a truth that on one level is put in place to help us deal with the uncomfortability that the ego is trying to deal with as it interfaces or interacts with something that is so incredibly vast, like the cosmos, right? So as we sit with this energy at the moment, these energies are pulling us to adjust and into a place of a deep internalized reflection. And the internalized reflection is around the nature of your truths or your vision or your belief structure, your cosmology, that up until this point in time has been rooted in an old paradigm of thinking. And so naturally speaking, we need to find deeper ways to connect and bond where the separation has been occurring. So this intimate relationship between the outer and the inner, and the fusing, the kind of bringing back to unifying our inner and outer self, can only come from the realization of the separation, of the disconnect, and the constriction that naturally arises when we come into human form. And when we experience the human form, we're lost. And that lostness, as it were, even if that's a word, is a direct sort of reflection of where we've been. Okay, so I encourage you to watch the Uranus and Taurus live stream that I did, because I spoke very briefly, but it was very much the essence of the conversation. And that was that this Uranus and Taurus transit wants to, especially with its relationship to Pisces, i.e. Neptune and Pisces, it's this need to really reconcile the separation from our own inner womb. Okay, the separation from our own inner womb, the separation from the identity of ourselves that's united in a way that is not just about individualism through a kind of narcissistic sense of self, right? An inability to penetrate to the depth of your own inner space and explore that space, and through that, through your suffering, through your dark night of the soul, reunite with an emotional state that's genuine and authentic. So the symbolism over here points to a prodding, like a shock of initiation into the cycles of understanding where that separation has been taking place. Now, the Mercury in Pisces over here, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily speak to that directly. It speaks more to the fact that it's still, completing the Uranus and Aries cycle, i.e. it starts with Mercury, it ends with Mercury. So it's kind of like bringing us the messages from this whole entire Uranus cycle, Chiron through Pisces cycle, and redefining our words, redefining the way that we intellectualize things, redefining the way that we form structure around our intuitive understanding that allows us to communicate, where the vibration of energy that is held in our communication is coming from a unification, coming from a place of wanting to reunite. And so the square between Jupiter here and Neptune and Mercury points to where those cosmologies or belief systems are rooted in a separation, us versus them mentality. So here's an example that I want to use over here. Now, this is not the chart of the current shootings that took place in New Zealand. Now, one thing that I want to put across in this video that's super important. Okay, I'm going to switch to a slide over here. There we go. Is that all over the world, there is human tragedy. In the States, there are huge experiences in which there is school shootings, etc. So this is not an event that is just out of the blue arising and going, okay, well, this is new. There are floods that are happening in the States. Zimbabwe was just recently hit by a huge cyclone that wiped out tons and tons of people and cities. There's a lot going on in the earth right now that is pointing to a sort of crisis, right? And it's not a crisis in the sense that, oh my God, something panic. It's just pointing to the nature of our earthly experience and where we are and what it means to be human. And I wanted to use this imagery today. And I know that for some of you that have watched the recent video called Outer Planets, Exploring the Outer Planets, you would have heard me talk about this. You're going to become familiar with this picture a lot if you follow my work, because it's the way that I'm going to use to articulate the deeper process of human understanding and how it actually works, how the psyche operates, and how we actually deal with these astrological transits. So the thing that I want to point to immediately with this most recent event that took place in New Zealand, and for those of you that aren't aware of what happened, I encourage you to go check it out. But just very briefly, it was a shooting that took place in a mosque where apparently 49 people had been killed. And, this was a huge event for people that are living in New Zealand, right? In Christchurch. Now, again, this actually correlates to things like 9/11. It correlates to things like shooting massacres that have been taking place in the States. Events like the tsunami that took place in 2004, if I'm not mistaken, in Thailand, and amongst other just experiences that it doesn't have to be as drastic as a mass shooting. It can be just simply abuse that you've experienced in your life. Okay. All of these experiences, all of these events, to me, okay, are held within this substructure over here. Okay. Everything that is held within the substructure over here, all of these memories, all of these imprinting, above the surface, which is the conscious sense of identity. Okay, so to me, the conscious sense of identity is existing here. This is what we interact with on a daily basis, right? It's our sense of identity, how we relate to things, and it's how the collective relates to things, how it defines stuff. But when events like this occur, okay, through Uranian experiences, what you're looking at here is a process of deeply repressed emotional complexes that exist within the collective psyche and within the individual psyche. So how you feel about this event, how you feel about those events will all pertain to a substrata of emotional memory that exists within you. And when we go through experiences like when Uranus hit 0 degrees Aries and it started to move here in 2011, we began to witness the rising of like Occupy Wall Street, the Arab Springs, and other sort of events where there were just massacres that were taking place, especially like in Venezuela, for instance, okay? And so this is a very critical point, Aries, the 0 degree Aries point over here, that to me, with Chiron conjunct the Sun, points to a deeply sensitive area of trauma that we carry within our collective, in which war and aggression and separation and pain is stored. And so as this now, again, the Sun conjunct Chiron was not occurring during this event. It was actually in Pisces, which points to me towards the event being something that's more about a complete surrender, like a complete delusion of religious ideologies that are rooted in the past of suffering, right? The meaning of something higher existentially that leads to the justification of actions. So the justification of actions is where the Chiron is sitting there saying, even though you have some existential being, right? Pluto conjunct the South Node and just Jupiter conjunct Jupiter in Sagittarius, deep patriarchal philosophies and belief systems that are rooted in my God is better than yours, creates human separation. And this human separation leads us to realities in which there's huge divides, huge disconnects where we don't feel our humanness. And that humanness is rooted in the separation, that separation of what it means to come onto the earth and actually that is actually here to connect with the real intention of this world, which is to unify from our separation. So these events would take place. This event takes place And what it does is it awakens within the substructure of human memory, of trauma, of suffering, of separation, and brings it straight to the surface. And onto the surface, what arises is our unresolved and repressed stuff that needs to be thought out. And so here at the bottom, I talk about this frozen emotional imprinting of Pluto. From the collective unconscious arises this Plutonian disempowerment, loss, death. How do we deal with this? Grief. And it arises to the surface like that. And as it arises to the surface, it comes into our conscious mind. And to me, these planetary energies over here point to a specific theme that is existing within the substructure of our collective memory, that as it rises, it brings us to resolve these things. And the difference now with Neptune and Mercury's trine to the North Node, and I wrote about this in the 2019 forecast, which you can find on our website, by the way. I wrote about Neptune's connection to the North Node, indicating where there would be progressive healing from grief, in which sudden experiences of trauma that exist within our collective would resurface to the top in order for us to dissolve. In other words, to actually heal through and unite us where that pain and suffering has been opened. So it's like a wound opening up. And again, these planetary archetypes are not doing this on purpose. I'm not saying that this is now happening to us because of some reason. It's just the nature of the cycles and what they are prodding at this deep unconscious level that arises to the surface. So when I see this astrology chart, what I see here is the memory imprinting coming to the surface. And so what you have are loads and loads of people all of a sudden in this area, and their response to the situation is not, even though it's coming from anger, which needs to be processed out within the community and within the world, the response is, oh, you know what? Like, there was a huge welcoming. There was a huge response of inclusion. The moon in Libra. Okay, so the moon is not in Libra at the time, right? I'm just showing you this chart of a new response, and that's the point here. This whole entire experience of subconscious memory coming to the surface through the action of the actions of somebody that is rooted in old paradigm philosophical dogma would create the wound. And now we get the opportunity to heal from that process through doing the opposite, which was blame, shame, guilt, but inclusion, and trying to understand and really connect with the woundedness that is existing within not only the community, but the people that lost people, you know, the suffering and the sadness. And again, the sun transiting through Pisces at that time, there was no choice. It was like this event happened, and within the event itself, it just brought us to a salvation. We needed to find a deeper way. And it's the contemplation around new values, around the values that are held within your truth, that are still observing separation. The healing with the sun conjunct Chiron to me is observing where in yourself you have defense mechanisms that are rooted in past fears, in which that separates you from feeling the intimacy or the connection between yourself and what you're in, you know, your other, or the human relation. And so I bring you back to this imagery over here with the full moon, and it's about the unification between the outer and the inner. And where this new moon falls for me is, or should I say the full moon, sorry, where it falls for me is the unification here, the bridging, the breaking down of those barriers, the softening of them, and the realization of the true healing that is potentially available for us right now through the crisis that is promoting us to see our true human values that can be deeply misguided and distorted through manipulation, through media, through manipulation of you know, just incredible amounts of propaganda that gets put through to separate versus to reunite. And so when we are not in that propaganda, we actually feel our humanness, and that's what unites us in that sense. Okay, peeps, I really hope that you got something out of this conversation today, and it, you know, provided some thinking or some food for thought. Just wanted to mention again, you know, the upcoming Chiron workshops, that's teaching, that will be arriving soon. And yeah, that's it. All right, everybody, have a fantastic